Hey there, it's Angie, and you're listening to Midlife Magic and Mayhem. Today's conversation is with Alison Rothman. Alison is a body centered holistic empowerment coach, emotional doula, guide, mentor, and transformational group facilitator with over 25 years of study and experience in somatic healing, arts and therapies, yoga and meditation, authentic embodiment practices, and holistic healing channels. Through her extensive studies, practices, and experiences, she provides clients and students with the ability to tap into their innate inner resource, release debilitating life patterns, reclaim their body, mind, heart, and soul connections so as to access their true selves, empowering them to live life awake, embodied, and in alignment. In addition to her one-on-one work, she facilitates retreats and events, runs women's groups, both virtually and in person, writes, speaks, and is the host of the podcast Embodied and Awake. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with her partner and teenage son. In this episode, Alison tells her incredible story of overcoming major life obstacles, including a debilitating eating disorder when she was young, losing almost everything in a house fire, and a near-death experience in Mexico. We talk about the life-changing practice of meditation, what all this talk about embodiment means, the importance of touch, and what she shares in her personal meditation ritual that includes an element that I will be incorporating into my own practice immediately. Hi, Alison. How are you today?
Oh, it's so good to be here, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on Midlife Magic and Mayhem. It's a pleasure. I would love to start. First of all, where are you? And what are you seeing visually with your eyes right now?
Where am I? I am at my home, which generally is quieter than my office. So I decided to record at home. And I'm sitting on my floor, staring at my couch. So with my laptop on my couch, I was told, when I started my podcast a couple of years ago, that the sound is really good if you talk into pillows. So I'm looking at a beautiful painting and your beautiful face and my nice green army green couch.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. For some reason, having a context of like where people are makes me feel more connected somehow. So thank you for sharing all that. And I know that you do work that is really impactful in who you are in the world and how you show up and your contribution. And I'd love to hear your story and how you kind of came to be where you are right now, what brought you here to what you're doing, how you show up, just to give us a sense of who is Alison.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, I grew up as a dancer and always been a mover and just really into the physical sensation of movement and being in a body. And simultaneously, I was also, engaged with a debilitating eating disorder from the time I was 7. And so there was this push pull my whole entire life of like, I want to be connected to my body. I'm in my body, but I'm really not because I just couldn't land in that place of true connection. So, fast forward through lots of different phases. When I was in my early 20s, I hit rock bottom and checked myself into an inpatient holistic treatment center for eating disorder recovery and subsequent depression and just addiction to everything. And, as hard as that moment was, it really changed the entire trajectory of my life. Brought me into this place of awareness of my humanness and myself that I do not believe I could have accessed if I had not gone into those depths. So I think I was about 23. I was already a yoga and meditation practitioner, but, all of my movement, I was there, but I wasn't there, because then the yoga became yet another way of punishing myself for what I'd eaten or, so, but this treatment center brought together all the pieces. It was, movement therapy, it was nature, it was sound therapy, it was group therapy, it was art therapy, food, herbs, flower essences, body work, energy work. I got it all. And, I tell people that and they're like, that sounds great. I'm like, yeah, it was great. And it was really, really hard. But again, it sent me into this realm of inquiry with myself that has really, morphed and transformed, over these decades. But I left treatment, I was there for about 6 months, and then I did outpatient for another year, which led me into a holistic bodywork training for a year, which was like another layer of work and surrender and being touched every day and touching bodies. And I was in tears every single day. It was just like I was just being purged of all this gunk that had been in me for basically my entire life. So 25 years of age, I had these years of, work under my belt. And then I was out in the world like, what in the hell do I do with all this? How do I function as a like quote unquote normal 25-year-old? Because I was so far from being normal, I hadn't had significant relationships because I couldn't. My eating disorder was my relationship, myself. That was all I could manage. That was all I had the bandwidth for. So I fumbled, as bounced around and tried a lot of different things. And finally, I was doing body work a lot and found myself in these places of really guiding people through emotional processes. People mostly on the table at that point, people would start to have these emotional processes. And I had to learn how to hold the space, at 20 something years old, and so I just gained this access to myself in a way that, is kind of unexplainable. I really haven't talked about this. This is really nice to chat about. And then, I started to explore, how else can I help people? How else can I understand? I felt like I had this depth of understanding around, in particular, eating disorders and addiction. But, as my life progressed, I experienced all these, highly traumatic experiences, and use all these practices that I, really started to embody in navigating my own process so that I could then hold space for others to move through theirs. So that's just a snippet. I don't know if you want me to keep going or if you want to interject.
No, I mean, wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And this is one of the reasons that I love to hear, for us to tell our stories, to listen to each other's stories, to tell our stories, because I know from my own experience, I learned so much from hearing from other women, from other men, even if the experience isn't what mine was or is. I still learn so much about just what it means to be a human, and my capacity for love opens, my capacity for patience, capacity for understanding what it means to be walking around in this world and all the different things that happen to us and how we all navigate that. So, and I think also too, in telling our stories, we learn about ourselves every single time we tell it, right? Like something else will show up. We're like, oh, you know what? I haven't, that just came through. Like, wow. So I think both sides of that are so important. And when we can truthfully, honestly share our experiences, it's a gift to the world. So thank you. And a couple of things in just the part that you just spoke to. So this definition of normal,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I wasn't normal. I didn't have a normal experience. And that's so, I think there's just so much around that. Like we all have this idea. We're programmed, not that we came up with it necessarily, but we're programmed with this idea of what quote unquote normal is. And then we live our lives trying to bounce off of that, of like trying to fit in or not fit in, or and it's just an interesting game. I don't know if I have much more to say about it than that, other than like, it's just strange that we do that. Why do we do that? So I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because even at, 48 years old, I still am like, I was a single mom for 11 years. I just found my partner at, when I was 47, like, so I didn't follow like the normal path, but there's nothing wrong with that, and in my 20s, it was like, yeah, we have this societal pressure. Like was supposed to, find my person in my 20s. I was supposed to be traveling. I was supposed to be having babies, and I didn't do any of that, And so I think if we can drop into our own experiences in the present moment as to what is actually going on with us, and normalize it for us, like, this is my track, and why do I want to spend all this time, energy, like our precious life force, wishing that something was, that we were more like so and so, it's like it brings in the whole comparison thing, which I think is just a epidemic, in the social media realm and just in the world on the whole. So I think it's a lifelong practice of being, present and at peace with who we are in whatever phase of life we're in, even if it's drastically different from those around us.
Exactly. And especially in this time of life, when it feels like so many of us do start to wake up and shed layers and stand in ourselves and stand in the mirror and say, wait a minute, I don't give a shit about what is normal. Like, who came up with that anyway? I didn't. Like, who put those rules out there? I don't know. Like, I get to choose. I get to really start knowing myself, or keep knowing myself. And actually, now that I'm sitting here thinking that, it's like, we always knew ourselves.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
actually always have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of letting go of all the things that never were for us to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
we that were injected into us or put on us, or we took on, like, okay, give me that, because that seems to fit right now. And then being able to, at this point in life, say, actually, that doesn't fit me anymore. I'm going to give that back. It's not, I don't care what normal is. I don't care what it looks like or doesn't look like. Like, it just doesn't, it's not mine. I'm not gonna take that on anymore.
Yeah, it's like remembering who we are. And I do feel like, there is this, I love that you call your podcast The Magic and Mayhem. And I'm always like, it's a midlife awakening, because it's like the layers just drop away. The bullshit just drops away. And it's like, why do I want to be anybody else but myself, And I think that there's a lot of, I work in my practice with a lot of women who struggle with addictions, of varying degrees. And I think that's where addictions play in. It's like this search um, for, they're looking for wholeness. They're looking to fill some hole that appeared at some juncture in their life because they were following some societal storyline, rather than just trusting and honoring themselves. And then things just started piling on. And so it's this like unraveling, this unwinding, and to come into like really the truth and the core essence of who we actually are. So, mhm.
Another piece of your story that I'm curious about is, you said when you got out of rehab and then did the year-long bodywork training. I'm assuming that that's massage or some sort of, because you said you were touching people every day
Yes.
and being touched every day. So my curiosity is, because I feel really strongly about this, how does touching bodies and being touched, what does that do for us? Like, you spoke to, you were crying every day, like this stuff was being cleared. Like, And to me, that really lands in me like humans touching each other. And I'll add in ways that are healthy and boundaried. Humans touching each other safely, um, safe enough, is something that we don't give enough importance, or we don't give enough to that. We don't give enough foundation for that. And it's crucially important for nervous system regulation, for all sorts of things. So if you're willing to share, I'd love to just speak to that a little bit. Like, what does touching bodies do for us?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And this particular training was it was a holistic bodywork training. So yes, it was massage, it was shiatsu, it was like chinesang, which is like a belly, it was craniosacral, it was like all of it, but the program was focused on heal thyself, right? So it was very therapeutic for those of us going through the program. I had no idea how much it was going to trigger in me. Like, no clue. And so, it was in the extreme, but I always say, I'm like, I feel like everybody should go through a massage training or some sort of bodywork training, somewhere where they are touched and have to give touch, non-sexual, safely, like you said, boundaried, because it does take you to another level that is almost inexplainable. So I'll do my best to explain this, but it feels like so far away. I think that, so many of us are guarded and see, got to touch ourselves. There's, our nervous systems are so heightened to our fellow humans, and the armor builds over lifetimes, and we don't know what to do with it. Yes, we can do our practices, and we can, you and I are both into dance. Like, we can dance and we can move and we can do yoga and we can, stretch and all that stuff. But there's something about the human touch that allows our systems to unwind in a way that is so profoundly valuable for our existence, for us to be able to relate to each other. And it's tricky because there is, an abundance, unfortunately, of especially women who have had sexual abuse. So, it becomes this fine line of, and if people walk into my office and I'm hugging them, and then they leave and I'm hugging them. And I have one client who's like, "You hug a lot." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I should ask before I just wrap myself around people, because not everybody is comfortable with it, but it is so needed." So, even getting massages doesn't necessarily do it. It's on a deeper plane. So I don't know what else to say about that. Is that
Yeah,
helpful?
absolutely. And because I agree, I know in my own life and experience and processes, touch
Hmm.
has really taken the healing work and magnified it. So when that piece is involved, and I have to say some sort of movement, right? So some sort of movement, breath work, environment, uh, and touch really makes it takes processing and healing and whatever is happening, and just frankly, comfort and feeling cared for and nurtured, whether it's for yourself, like I'm putting my hands on my body, whether it's for myself with another person. It's one thing to have a conversation, which is also very important. But another thing when we can, if I'm, if I can hold you, if I can hold your hand, if I can touch your shoulder, if we can have an embrace, it changes things. It makes us closer. It has us bond. There's that oxytocin and everything that gets involved at a physical chemical level, those bonding hormones. Um, my daughter, when she was younger, she would get she would get a tummy ache or something, and I would put essential oils on my hands, and I would just put my hands on her tummy and do a little stroking and do a little massage technique. And she would be like, okay, that's better. And whatever was happening with that, who cares? But that putting hands on a body with consent, she's asking for it, which is a whole different conversation. And I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with Betty Martin, maybe, and the Wheel of Consent and her work. Oh my gosh. I'll put that in the show notes. Such valuable and transformational work around consent and touch. So I highly recommend people to look into that.
Yeah, there's something about, something melts in you when you receive touch that is welcome. If it's like you're alone and putting hand on heart, hand on belly, I do that all the time. I have clients do that, just to get themselves centered. But I love that you brought in about children because, I'm raising a teenage boy, and it's fascinating because I watch just the way he moves and his posture. And sometimes he's really averse to touch, and other times he asks me for a massage. And when those moments when I can get him to melt into me, it's like something so big shifts in him, and our connection is deeper. I feel like he's so much more present. He's not like zoned into the screen all the time. So, as parents, I feel like it's really important for us to teach our children, even our boys, how that to receive, touch that is safe, and that it's okay to like want to like snuggle with your mom, even when you're, a foot taller than her, that's okay. That's not a sign of there's anything wrong or weakness. So that was just a total aside. But
I love it. I mean, for me, it all fits together, right? I mean, because I think what that does is it infuses us as adults to be able to ask for what we need, because we get to adulthood, even we get to midlife. And, I work with individuals, I work with couples. And so often we get to a place where we don't know how to ask for what we need or what we want. And even with touch, like I was just speaking to the Wheel of Consent, how do I want to be touched? I, so often people say, well, I don't know, just touch me. And it's like, okay. However, let's back up, slow down and back up. How do you want to be touched? It's a totally different thing. And so many times we freeze. We're like, I don't know. I don't even know what I like. So no, that's a whole other tangent, but
well, totally. And it's important, I mean, there's just a lot of wounding around healthy touch, period, and I think that again, as parents raising children, we can help to accelerate that process and help people to become more attuned to what they need, But my partner and I were literally just having this conversation the other night about, because the way that he was like touching my arm was like driving me nuts. And I finally was like, listen, when you squeeze like that, that feels really good. When you're like just lightly, like, I don't like that very much, And he was like, oh, okay. Like, I got it. And now he doesn't do it, but it took me having to, this is just such a tangent, but it took me having to verbalize it, because even in our late 40s, early 50s, whatever, not everybody knows. And when you're with different people, everybody likes touch in different ways. So
it's, yeah, I mean, that is, yeah, that's a great conversation. So let's go back a little bit and pick up with your story. So you were a single mom for a long time, have found your partner now. You could, I guess we'll call it later, whatever that means. So I'd love to know your experience about being a single mom, having, all the tools that you picked up along the way. What was that part of your life like, or how has that been for you?
thank you for reining us in here. Yeah, I became a single mom when my son was 1, after a very tumultuous, abusive relationship it was like a welcome I was like, I am better off on my own than to be, I will not subject myself and my child to this forever. And it rocked my world. My practices went out the window. I had, my son's also special needs. So it was full on. And I would say I really struggled for the first couple of years in finding my footing and figuring out how to be, a mom and work and stay sane. I was running on no sleep. And I had this pivotal moment. He was about 3, where I was like, I'm drowning. Like, I'm literally drowning. And if I don't do something drastic, that's going to be it, And so I committed to myself that I was going to wake up. He was a really early riser. I was going to wake up at least an hour before him and meditate and write and be with myself, move my body if I had time. And it changed everything. That, sometimes he would wake up and I had to train him to just kind of lay there with me while I was sitting. But to have that moment, and that long moment with myself before, engaging in trying to be a mom was huge. And so I emphasize so much that crucial nature of anchoring ourselves, first thing in the morning, even if you don't have kids in the house, before you engage with life, to drop in and to connect. So, it was up, down, all around, and somehow I've found my way. There was a lot that came into play in those years. We came home to our house on fire when he was 7, lost 95% of my hard-earned belongings as a single mom. It was a huge blow. Just a lot of trauma and drama with his dad, who doesn't live here any longer. I had a near-death experience while traveling alone in Mexico. I mean, it was like one thing after another that each event forced me to dial in my practices in a very different way. And each time I was like, oh my God, like I can't. And then it was like, oh yes, you can. Like, this is what you're made for, And I just kept rising up and kept showing up. And now my son's almost 14. He'll be 14 in a couple weeks. And I feel very anchored in who I am. As it's still like some days I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck is going on here, but I'm just going to go with it. But for the most part, I feel like we have landed. I have landed. And yes, I'm now partnered. I have been for the last year and a half. And we live together in this like family unit that I never had. And it's very foreign to all of us. And beautiful and challenging and really affirming in so many ways. And I wasn't sure if partnership was going to be in the cards for me. And I had surrendered to that and I was at peace with it. And then he appeared. So there's always, you never know. You never know what's going to happen.
You don't ever know. And one of the things that you just said that I just loved was, life will present things, like big things will happen, like coming home to your house on fire, having a near-death experience in Mexico. And yet you go to your practices, you go to what you have, you go to your tools, and then you say, oh, but I can. Yes, I can. I think I'll say women especially, but at this point, I think it's everyone. I think men and women are equal in this. We have no concept of how powerful we are and what we're really capable of. We are capable of so much. And, leaning into the tools and the transformations and the healing that we pick up along the way and trusting it when things are really hard, because it can seem like, okay, me getting up 30 minutes earlier and meditating is not going to solve XYZ problem. Right? Because it seems so quote unquote big, and it is. It can be like a giant major thing. So I'd love to know, during some of those times that seemed to be like, oh God, no, this one's it. This is it. This was the
Well,
big
we
one.
gotta pick it down.
It's like Sanford and Son. I don't. This is the big one. Like, I'd
Yep.
love to know what are the things. What were the things that were the most helpful? What are the things that have been the most helpful for you? And then now within your contribution, your business, your clients, like what are the things that are most helpful, most useful for you and then your clients?
hmm Well, I mean, to me, the most important thing is staying steady and committed to whatever practice and practices you choose to do. Um, for me, meditation has been a huge, non-negotiable, life-changing. I'll share in this moment when I was in Mexico. So long and short of it, I was witness to a hit by the Mexican drug cartel. They opened fire in the middle of the day. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Whoa.
yeah, so that's a whole other story. And in that moment, the first gunshot went off, and I like, I came right into center. I was like, this is what meditation has prepared me for. Like, I was so present. I did
Mm,
not exit, I was like right there. And, I have so many people come to me who are like, I can't meditate. I've tried meditating. I can't meditate. How long did you try? 2 weeks. I tried. I'm like, that's not going to do it, So whatever practice you choose has to be done consistently. And I'm on a huge like soapbox about meditation right now, because it it trains us to show up for life. Period. It teaches us how to stay present when the storms start coming, because they just do. I mean, whether it's a minor little blowing of the wind or it's a whole swirling, but for us to learn how to not flee, not react, not um, check out, not have a major freak out ourselves, which I'm not saying I'm like perfect by any means. I mean, I have my moments, but um, it is essential in learning how to sit with ourselves. And so meditation has been streamlined. Writing is a huge outlet for me. Movement, dance, just organic movement. I have a really strong yoga background, but I don't really like do like the real practice. Like, I just kind of make up my own stuff. I just move. I get on my mat and I move. Um, Being in nature has been a huge anchor. Connecting with friends, connecting with partner, my with my partner now, but even before that, connecting with like-minded. I run circles of women. I believe so deeply in the power of community and the power of the group. And I get so much out of even just facilitating them, and food, herbs. I'm a big herbal tea drinker, tinctures, flower essence therapy. I just, in those high crisis moments, I kind of just was like, I need whatever I can bring in and do. I got to do. So, but after the house fire, it was hard. It was hard to get up and sit. I was really emotional. I was very overwhelmed, and I would try to do stuff and I couldn't. So there's also like this power of rest. And that's another huge piece in unwinding trauma and really hard moments of life, is that we have to allow ourselves to just be too sometimes, have the good cry. So it's about meeting, and that's what I'm always trying to do with myself and encourage clients. It's like, how can we meet ourselves in all the flavors of life, all the different emotional states, whatever is going on, rather than waiting for that perfect moment and then choosing to do our practice? How can we mix it in to our lives? And that's, where my business was birthed from, Embody Life. Like, how can we embody ourselves in midst of all that's going on. That was
I
a
love
long
it.
answer.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's talk about the word embody because you and I are swimming in that ocean. So we kind of have ideas of like what it means and what it doesn't mean and what it means for us. And sometimes I do think it can be very, very personal. But just for listeners who might be thinking, I keep hearing this embodiment, disembodiment. What does that even mean? Like, I don't, because sometimes what I find people will say, I don't really even know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, of course I'm embodied. I have a body. Like, I don't, what are you talking about? It's almost like it's something that you can only see after you realize that you haven't been. Does that make sense? You look back and you go, like, there's an exercise or something to do. And then they look back and they go, oh, oh, yeah, I've not been in my body, right? So I would love to hear from you what embody means. What does it mean?
Mhm. It's great because it is so overused now, like so overused, and eh, yeah, a lot of people don't understand what that means. To me, it means we are connected to ourselves. There's no gaps in how we're moving through the world, how we are in our home life, in our relationships, how we show up in our communities. It is this connection that comes from within. And it gives us this experience of feeling deeply connected to our physical bodies. But, I think that there's, this misperception around, okay, well, I exercise and I do this, and so therefore I'm embodied. No, you can absolutely exercise and be completely disembodied, completely disconnected from yourself. So it's this like felt sense. And I always talk about this like inner muscle of awareness and strength and connection that is our anchor. And we move from that place, right? So, as we get older, I don't know, I'm finding this and I don't want to generalize, but there's limitations to our physicality. I'm in physical therapy right now for my knees because I've sat on the floor for like so many years. But so excuse my fidgeting. But we have to learn how to meet ourselves at every step along the way. And that just means that we give ourselves, there's that like bandwidth and that grace that I'm not doing this justice, but that is kind of our guiding force. We learn how to navigate all of our life experiences while staying connected and dropped in with ourselves. And we can, I always say you forget to remember. Like sometimes you forget my body, I'm back here, but I'm like, my body is like way the heck across the street. I have moved on. And I'm like, oh, wait, I gotta bring it back in here, So I think it's just this constant dance of figuring out what our unique embodiment feels like, and I do think it's individual, it's impossible to articulate if anybody besides ourselves is, I mean, you can tell when somebody is totally disconnected, but it's just this constant inquiry and constant dance.
Yes, absolutely. And why is it? I mean, you just spoke to this, but I'm going to ask somewhat, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. Why is it important?
Mhm.
Why is it important to have this thing called being embodied? This thing.
Well, I mean, maybe not everybody thinks it's important. I think it's really important because I don't believe we can heal and live a whole life if we're disconnected from our bodies. It's like, this is no judgment to talk therapy at all, but, and not but, and when there's plenty of people. When I hit rock bottom, I was in therapy 3 times a week. I was talking about everything. But never once was I asked, can you drop in to your body and feel what's going on in you? Sometimes there's no words. It's just a feeling. You just need to learn how to be with it. So go ahead.
No, I'm like, my hair is exploding. I'm like, yes, yes. I've told a couple of people in my life recently. This is my experience, right? At this point, if I'm doing some sort of work in any sort of realm of a therapeutic realm or embodiment realm or healing realm or anything, if it doesn't include my body, I'm out. Like I'm down for good conversation. Obviously, I have a podcast. I love being in good, deep conversation. Like, it's really meaningful to me. We get so much value from that. And there are places that language does not get to. It just doesn't. And so when you combine this work of the body, whether again it's movement or somatic healing work, or combining psychotherapy with somatic work, like that's a new expanding domain and realm of psychology, which I think is wonderful that some of these pockets are starting to include the body. And because again, I know from my own experience, like when my body's involved, things go to out to the stratosphere. Like I get so much more. Like it's so much more impactful. So for me, like that's why it's important.
Totally. You can't like think your way through a lot, you know? And I can speak to, eating disorder recovery and other addictions, I have people come in who have tried every possible form of talk therapy, every possible diet, but they're so disconnected from their bodies. They're not listening. And so as soon as they make the choice to slow it down and to drop into their bodies, like it's like magic, they just get so much information and insight, and you're really able to access your intuition, which is, this guiding force when we're moving through our healing journey. The body has to be involved in order to heal. It just does. So
It is part of our human experience. I think for and this is just my own reasoning. We've spent so many decades at this point looking from the place of our thinking. It's all thought. It's all cognitive behavioral therapy. Again, not knocking therapy. There are times when it is absolutely the thing to do, talk therapy. But putting all of our eggs in that basket, putting everything on mind, and kind of forgetting that we have a body. And this brain is attached to the body. Like it's all one system. We can't just separate things out. And how our body physically feels makes a difference to our mental health, our emotional health. They all play together on the same playground in this same body. So, and just stuck energy. Like I had a client years ago, and one of the main things that she picked up as a tool that helped her the most when she was at her most overwhelmed, most stressed, most like anxiety was shaking. Just shaking, like the Kundalini, like just shaking, starting with your feet, working up all your legs, your torso, your hands. And even if you're sitting at work and you only have 30 seconds, just shaking your hand, like shake it, like hard, like really get in there. That can release energy and redistribute energy and recalibrate the nervous system. And then, okay, now what's my thought process like? Maybe I'm not going to react how I thought I would have a minute ago before I got into my body a little bit first.
yeah, and I just want to name, I love that. And it's like, again, yeah, it's so individual and everybody has to find their own way. But, I also want to name that just because, if you can be embodied and not be like in like awesome physical shape too. You can be like injured, you can be older and not able to move, and that's not what it's about. It's not about, oh, she can do it, so she's really embodied. Like, I just feel like that is like such a misperception. It really is about tuning into our energy flow and being able to, oh, okay, I can feel my hip, and oh, my hip is hurting, but I'm with it. I'm with the process. And so tracking the sensations and tracking the energy is a huge component of this. What does this information have for me? What is this trying to say to me so that I can dive into my own self inquiry in a deeper way? So I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I love it. And for me, that's this whole conversation around embodiment is really about listening. It's learning how to listen, learning how to be quiet enough, rest enough, be still enough to just listen and listen, like you were speaking about meditation earlier. And I think so many people have this idea that I can't meditate because I can't clear my head. I can't clear my thoughts. And it's like, that's not the point. So we're never going to clear our thoughts. Our thoughts arise on their own. That's what this brain does, is it produces thoughts. So they're going to be there. For me, meditation and this practice of embodiment and listening is being able to be with, kind of get behind the thoughts, get behind them, watch them as the observer. And from that place, I can start to make an attempt to listen to the body, right? It's like, okay, my thoughts are over here. If you're listening, I have my hand in front of me. If you're not on video, like my thoughts are in front of me over here and I'm behind them. So what's happening back here? They can go on and on about whatever they're going to do, like squirrels running around the yard. Okay, there they are. I'm going to sit back here and listen and just be and see what sensations arise. And nothing may happen, and that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I love that you brought that in because I think that, people think that meditation, you're supposed to be sitting and you're like blissed out. No, you sit in meditation and all your shit comes up. It's about learning how to not engage with it, right? How to stay connected to yourself without allowing all the natural human monkey mind to take hold. So dropping into our bodies, connecting with the breath. But it is not always a blissed out experience. I mean, I've had very few blissed out experiences while sitting in meditation, in fact. So just wanted to throw that into
Yeah. Yeah. And so on the meditation, because I know, people have questions and there is no prescription. Let's just put that out there. There is no perfect one way. What is your way? What do you find your meditative practice? What is it that works for you? Like, do you like traditionally sit? Do you sit in the same place? Do you have a certain amount of time? Do you listen to things? Are you quiet? What works for you?
good questions. Yes, I am all about simple. Like with everything, even all my practices, I'm like, how can I do this in a simple way so that I'll actually do them, right? So I'm a 5 a.m. riser and my altar is right back there. And I set my so I just moved, but I was living in this teeny tiny place where I literally had like a corner of my living room, but I was like, I'm going to do it. This is my space. Nobody's touching it. So I think it's really important to designate a spot, and I always tell people that because it's your sacred space. I don't care what you put on it, but to be going to the same place. I set my cushion up at night the night before so I can just literally roll out of bed and come down. And I light a candle, and I'm actually an open eye meditator. I learned years ago, I was teaching a retreat up at the Shambhala Center at Red Feather Lakes. This is probably like 8 years ago. I was the yoga teacher, and there was a meditation teacher from, I want to say Nepal. And he was hilarious, but he said, if you are sitting in meditation with your eyes closed, you're resting. If you're sitting in meditation with your eyes open, you're meditating. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. I'm going to try this. I know. So I have found because it's so early in the morning and I'm tired, I mean, if I close my eyes, I'm like just going to like drift back off to sleep. So the open eye and gazing at a candle really works for me. It keeps me alert. And I need quiet. I don't want anything. Nothing's playing. I don't want nobody's talking to me. Nobody's awake. And I just focus on. I have two affirmations, mantras that I just continuously come back to, and my sweet spot is 25 minutes. Sometimes I do 20 if I need to get some other work done before my son wakes up, but 20 to 25 minutes is kind of my sweet spot. And I always, I have a ritual. I sit, I have my shawl, I burn Palo Santo, I draw a card. It just sets the tone for the day. I sit in meditation, and anytime my mind starts going, which it does, I will just come back to the affirmation that I'm working with. Just come back to that. Soft gaze at the candle flame. So that's it. That's my practice.
That's beautiful.
Hmm.
Open eye meditation. Okay, I'll try it. You've convinced me. Not that you need to or we're trying to.
Yeah, no.
But I'm fascinated. I love that. I love it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes, when my timer goes off and I'm not totally ready to get up, sometimes I'll just sit there and close my eyes for a little bit. And that's when I'll put my hands on my body and just kind of let things settle. But I feel a very strong difference now between sitting with my eyes closed and or sitting with my eyes open. And it's been profound for me. And there's something about looking at the candle flame that's really powerful.
There's a visual connection with humans and fire, which we don't need to get into right now, but I've recently heard some stuff about that that's pretty fascinating. So that makes sense. Human visual eyeballs and fire and the relationship there. Yeah.
Well, you get entranced by the flame.
It is. It's entrancing, and it does something to the nervous system and our visual field. And there's a lot of really good stuff there. And I'd love to ask you about the ritual part. So what about, you said it's a ritual, and that's something that I think that in our culture, we have lost, we've lost relying on ritual as a foundation of in all sorts of ways. So I really, really want to honor that you brought that in. Like, this is a ritual. So what does making it a ritual, does that give it any more and the answer may be no. Does that give it any more significance for you? Like, what does that do?
Absolutely. There's just it's like this imprint in my system that I know. I sit down, and as soon as I pick up the lighter and I light the candle and I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to be present with myself. Now it's time for me to drop in to myself. And it's like this energetic shift, and it really does like impact how my day flows. And sometimes I get up and I haven't slept well the night before. I'm just in a bad mood. Like, I'm just like, ugh. I still sit, I still do it, but I'm like hating it. I don't always love it. I mean, most of the time I crave it, but um and I kind of just am going through the motions. It doesn't quite land in the same way. At least I'm still doing it. And that's the thing. It's like we have to keep showing up for ourselves. And by creating these containers for ritual, it is giving ourselves this like deep nourishment from within. And I bring ritual into, all of my events, because it does like send into motion something that is really unexplainable. It's like accessing something that's so much bigger than we are.
Absolutely. It's a form of offering. It's a form of an offering to something greater that, okay, I'm here. I'm present. I may be in a bad mood. I may not have slept. I'm a human having human things happening in my life, and I'm here. I'm here not only for me, but I'm here for the thing greater than me. I'm here for the health of the ecology of the whole.
Absolutely. And the ecology of my family and my team.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because I need to be a sane mama in
Because
order
I'm
to
going
have
to
a
try
happy
to be
house.
nice. Yes, exactly.
I love it. And a good partner.
Yes, and a good partner. And I just know, I mean, and this has been a huge thing with Michael and I, in the mornings, because he likes to just start talking to me right away. And I'm like, we need quiet, quiet. Like, I don't care if I'm done with my practice. Like, I'm still like in my zone. So, it's honoring that. But we have to first recognize that for ourselves, that is what we feed off of. That's what we need. That's what fuels us to be able to show up for them too, so.
So good. Scott and I, my husband and I have this joke. It's not really a joke, but I'm the same. Like first thing in the morning, I'm a no talker. Like I'm still in my little quiet space. I'm still in my bubble. Like give me a minute to work everything out, to really I'm a very deep sleeper, so it like takes me a minute to fully get out into the world. And Scott jumps out of bed like a rabbit. He's like, okay. I'm like, nope, shut it down. So therefore, it's not quite that drastic, but we like to play that it is. And so, but I had a time there were a few weeks where I was really in some stuff and I'm like, 8 a.m. Don't talk to me before 8 a.m. Like, can we make an agreement? And I think that's what good partnership is about. Like, I'm not mad at him. He doesn't need to be mad at me. I'm just really in a period of time, not forever, maybe. I'm in a period right now where like I need some space in the morning. And can we please create an agreement that like I'm not gonna talk. I'm not gonna answer your question. Can we not really say anything before 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 7:30, whatever it is? Yeah, it's like you just work these things out. Absolutely. Well, I love your practices, the ritual aspect. I think it's amazing. So how do you bring this in? Tell me more about your work. Like what are you up to in the world as far as, creating what you create?
Yeah, so I work one-on-one with mostly women, but I've had some men sprinkle in and a couple couples. But I work. I have a degree in coaching, health and wellness, integrative practice coaching. I just felt like I needed the degree. So I don't like, and we had this conversation when we had coffee. I don't really like calling myself a coach necessarily. I did study dance movement therapy for a while. So I have a very strong background in somatic, which is body centered somatic therapies. So I just kind of bring it all in, and everybody's different, and that's what I love so much about my work, is that it's constantly keeping me on my toes. I feel like I have so many different tools to offer individuals, and some people are ready for that deeper layer stuff and they go right there, and other people it takes them a while, before they can access it, before they can surrender and really be open to it. But I had a client call me an emotional doula a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, ooh, I love that. So really, my background, you've heard my background now. I feel like I've got access to so many different like channels into supporting people on various levels. So I'm a coach and a guide, a mentor, an emotional doula, a teacher, kind of whatever hat I need to put on in the moment. And it's very creative. I mean, yes, I have like curriculums sort of that I follow, guidelines that I sort of follow. But for me, it's really just about being present in the moment with people and feeling into, okay, what can I offer them in perspective, in practice, in I try really hard to not allow it to just be a talk, a talk fest. I have some clients who just want to talk a lot, but how can I get them connected into their bodies? Sometimes we do movement. Sometimes I bring in touch, sometimes I whip out the massage table and get them on the table. But a lot is about me teaching them how to be present with themselves and how to learn how to move through these layers of whatever they have going on in their physical, emotional, spiritual, heart bodies. So I don't know if that helped. It seems like we're moving. Something is going on with the recording.
Okay, in all transparency of technology, we just had a little strange thing happen, so we're back. Alison, I so love the work that you do. I know how important it is, how needed it is, and I just resonate with it so deeply. So thank you for sharing all of your gifts that you do with your clients and with all of us. I just really appreciate it. And how can we find you? What do you have going on right now? And I'll link everything in the show notes, but for people listening, how can we find you?
That's great. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. And I wore the ring that you and I both have. Angie and I met for coffee, and she took her hand out, and I was like, oh my God, I have that ring. So anyhow, I have that. We definitely were meant to cross paths, and
for sure,
having the opportunity to be here. So my website is embodymylife.com. And I'm based in Boulder, but I do work, I work with clients all over, the beauty of Zoom. And I also run different events. I have a couple of local events coming up at the turn of the season here in Boulder that are movement-based, yoga, meditation, writing, women's circles, dance, and, kind of an abbreviated version of my bigger retreats. I have a summer retreat. I don't know when this is airing, but in July, that I only have a couple spots left for at Joyful Journey Hot Springs. It's a magical annual retreat and lots of other fun stuff cooking. So I'd love to connect. I send out weekly emails with just some inspiration for this wild human journey that we are all navigating together. So
thank you. They all sound wonderful and magical.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison, for being here and for being patient with our little tech hiccups at the end of our episode. It's just, hey, it's real life, man. This is what goes on. But thank you. Thank you again for being here. I so appreciate it. Talk soon. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Alison. Another amazing example of a woman transforming her life by staying with herself. And please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow me on Instagram at Angie.bird. Please share the podcast with your friends. This will help many more women out there get a little dose of magic and mayhem in their lives as well.